In 1947, a mysterious event occurred near Roswell, New Mexico that sparked worldwide fascination and set the stage for decades of speculation. According to a local newspaper, the U.S. Army captured a flying saucer that crashed in the desert, leaving behind debris and possibly even alien bodies. This crash was allegedly concealed by the U.S. military, creating an entire generation of stories linking UFOs with government cover-ups. Was it an ordinary weather balloon, a secret military experiment, or something from another world? Now, new evidence has surfaced that could finally provide answers to this enduring enigma. So stick around as we explore the facts, separate truth from fiction, and offer our expert opinion on this strange event. Get ready for another journey into the unknown as we investigate the Roswell incident. On July 1947, a rancher named Mac Brazel discovered some strange debris on his property near Corona, New Mexico, after he and other ranchers allegedly heard a loud crash several days earlier during the night. He contacted the Roswell sheriff, George Wilcox, who then contacted the Roswell Army Airfield, also known as the RAAF. Two officers from the base were dispatched to meet up with Brazel to examine the site. Major Jesse Marcel, the senior intelligence officer for the 509th Bomber Group, and Captain Sheridan Cabot, a special agent with the U.S. Army Counterintelligence Corps or CIC, assigned as the lead covering agent for the Roswell Air Base. Upon locating the debris site, Marcel and Cabot noticed the debris covered a large area estimated at approximately 1 square mile or more. Later reports from Brazel also stated there was a shallow trench, several hundred feet long, that had been gouged into the land. Marcel began examining pieces of the debris and immediately noticed several strange items. First, there appeared to be large pieces of metal that had almost no weight to them, but were extraordinarily strong. There were also pieces of a very thin metal that had a similar appearance to tinfoil that you could crush in your hand. But as soon as you released the metal, it returned to its previous shape. Additionally, there were pieces of an unknown material that had the strength and feel of metal in the shape of small I-beams with strange violet-colored symbols on them. The symbols were reminiscent of hieroglyphics or some form of unknown geometric writing. Marcel collected samples of the strange material and informed Cabot he would take them back to base, while Cabot apparently remained at the site for further examination. However, Marcel did not immediately return to the base. Possibly believing the debris was too fantastic, Marcel decided to stop at his home first to show his family the strange materials he found. Marcel's son, Jesse Marcel Jr., was one of the family members who witnessed and handled this debris, and later confirmed the items as described. Once Marcel returned to base, he showed them to the base commander, Colonel William Blanchard. Upon examining the debris, Blanchard ordered his public affairs officer, Lieutenant Walter Hott, to put out a press release that they had found the remains of a crashed flying saucer that led to the Roswell Daily Record publishing the now infamous newspaper headline, "RAAF captures flying saucer on ranch in Roswell region." Around this same time frame, the United Press began reporting that residents near the ranch had seen strange blue lights several days earlier around 3 a.m. These two reports caused reporters from multiple outlets to overwhelm the Pentagon, demanding more details as more news articles were released on the incident.
The many rumors regarding the flying disc became reality yesterday when the intelligence office of the 509th Bomb Group of the 8th Air Force, Roswell Army Airfield, was fortunate enough to gain possession of a disc through the cooperation of one of the local ranchers and the sheriff's office of Chavez County. The flying object landed on a ranch near Roswell sometime last week. Not having phone facilities, the rancher stored the disc until such time as he was able to contact the sheriff's office, who in turn notified Major Jesse Marcel of the 509th Bomb Group Intelligence Office. Action was immediately taken, and the disc was picked up at the rancher's home. It was inspected at the Roswell Army Airfield and subsequently loaned by Major Marcel to higher headquarters.
Within hours of the initial press release going out, the commander of the 8th Air Force in Fort Worth, Texas, Brigadier General Roger Ramey, ordered a new press release claiming the first one was incorrect and that the object retrieved was nothing more than a weather balloon. And, although not confirmed, Ramey may have ordered this before viewing the debris himself, given the quick turnaround. Regardless, Ramey also ordered Marcel to fly to Fort Worth with the debris so he could view it personally. Upon arrival, Marcel provided the debris to Ramey and his chief of staff, Colonel Thomas Dubose. The debris was immediately declared to be just a weather balloon, and Marcel was ordered later that day to pose for photographs with balloon debris, which years later, Marcel stated was not the debris he brought with him to Fort Worth. Based on the later news reports, the public seemed to largely accept the new weather balloon explanation. It's important to note that in 1947, the average American was more trusting of the U.S. government. World War II had just ended, and there was a general sense of American pride throughout the country. Although there are some indications of people not believing the second story released, it would take over 30 years for the Roswell story to gain widespread attention again. In 1978, a nuclear physicist turned UFO researcher named Stanton Friedman interviewed the now retired Lieutenant Colonel Jesse Marcel about what happened in Roswell in 1947. Marcel told Friedman about the strange materials he had found and handled, stating they were not of this earth, and definitely not balloon material of any kind. Marcel also stated that the debris he was photographed with was not the same debris he brought from New Mexico, also stating to Friedman, and in later interviews, that it was General Ramey who came up with the balloon story, and that he ordered Marcel to go along with it. Marcel later confirmed the same story on a popular television show, for which he was interviewed on in 1980. Additionally, Marcel's son, Jesse Marcel Jr., also stated he remembered seeing the strange materials when he was 11 years old, when Marcel brought it home to show his family, and that his father told him it was not of this world. Along with these interviews, multiple researchers came to Roswell and the surrounding area, interviewing even more witnesses. These new interviews revealed claims of strange lights in the same area days before the crash, with some even claiming that they heard a loud explosion or crash during the night in the days leading up to the debris discovery. These interviews and follow-on investigations are detailed in one of the first books on the event, The Roswell Incident. Surviving family members of Sheriff Wilcox and rancher Mac Brazel have also been interviewed since the Roswell story resurfaced. Their families, along with others, have stated independently that government officials spoke to Wilcox, Brazel, and others, threatening their lives if they ever talked about the incident again. According to some, Brazel was even forced to go on a local radio show and admit that the materials he saw were nothing but weather balloon-related items such as sticks, foil, and pieces of rubber. Brazel even admitted later on that he kept some of the debris but gave it to government officials when they came asking for it. These claims also likely led to some of the first reported stories of the Men in Black, for which C4 Detective did our first investigation video on. Other witnesses included fellow officers of the 509th who served with Marcel, who corroborated his story, even some who refused to talk about it, but claimed everything Marcel said was true. The Roswell Air Base Public Affairs Officer, Walter Hott, was one of them, and who said in an interview it was some kind of craft from outer space. Another officer claimed that he actually helped transport alien material from the Roswell Air Base to Wright-Patterson Airfield in Ohio. Additionally, the daughters of Sheriff Wilcox stated that their father had sent deputies out to the crash site the next day, but the entire area was cordoned off by the U.S. Army, with checkpoints set up. This was also confirmed by others including Brazel's family, who stated Brazel was escorted off his own land by military personnel when he tried to go back the next day. But where do the stories of alien bodies come from? Well, following the renewed interest in the Roswell incident, several new witnesses came forward stating that the debris field which Brazel and Marcel initially found was only a location where a UFO hit the ground or initially exploded, breaking off pieces of it, and that the main crash site was actually located by the U.S. Army approximately 40 miles away, with at least one military witness claiming it had been tracked on radar prior to its crash. This main crash site was supposedly witnessed by several people, to include military personnel who later claimed they participated in the recovery, and even a local firefighter in the area who was also present stating he saw a crashed alien craft with alien bodies being recovered, but was told by the military on the scene to never talk about it. Another witness was a mortician named Glenn Dennis who worked at the Ballard Funeral Home in the area during this time period. He stated that sometime in July of 1947 he received several curious phone calls from the Roswell Air Base, with one coming from the mortuary officer at the base. The military officer asked Dennis how he could get some small hermetically sealed coffins, and also asked questions about preserving bodies exposed to the elements for a few days without contaminating the tissue. Dennis drove out to the base later that night out of curiosity to meet up with a military nurse he was friends with at the base hospital to see what he could find out. While there, Dennis stated he saw several large pieces of wreckage with odd engravings sticking out of the back of a military ambulance. He then went to the hospital and began to visit with the nurse he knew until suddenly, he was threatened by military police and forced to leave the base. However, according to Dennis, the next day he met again with the nurse, who told him that several strange little bodies had been found to which she drew pictures of for him. According to Dennis, this nurse was mysteriously transferred from Roswell shortly after this incident, and when he tried to look into where she was sent, someone at the base told him she had transferred to England. As these stories continued to grow, more and more witnesses along with relatives of witnesses came forward with their own accounts of the Roswell incident. As Freedom of Information Act requests on the incident began to substantiate a government cover-up on the event, Congress requested the General Accounting Office conduct an audit of the incident, which forced the U.S. Air Force to conduct their own investigation in 1994, later providing a report detailing their efforts and to provide their own version on what really happened. This document is called the Roswell Report. The investigation associated with the report was led by Colonel Richard Weaver, who also helped draft the 994-page report. The investigation included reviewing remaining records available and interviewing witnesses themselves. C4 Detective has reviewed this report and found several interesting points. While we can't possibly go into detail on the entirety of this large document, we can summarize the findings. The bottom line of the report is that the Air Force actually admitted there was a cover-up. However, they stated it was not an alien spacecraft that crashed, but instead, a then top-secret project called Mogul that was essentially a series of modified weather balloons strung together with special sensors in an attempt to detect Soviet nuclear tests. That said, the Project Mogul theory in the original report does have some inconsistencies and missing data, which many UFO researchers have since pointed out. In response to this, the Air Force released a second follow-up document titled the Roswell Report, Case Closed, as if to say there was nothing more to address on the matter. While the two Roswell reports provide an initial strong case and explanation for the secrecy and subsequent cover-up of the Roswell incident, there were several things our team noticed when reviewing them. First, in the entirety of the documents, there is a consistent theme to debunk anything related to potential otherworldly explanations. While debunking can be a good method of testing a hypothesis, it is important for any investigator to remain objective throughout the course of investigative work. A good example of this can be found in the follow-up Case Closed report, which devotes a good portion to debunking the numerous witnesses of alien bodies being recovered. The report seems to focus only on what it can disprove and little else, and continually disparages UFO theorists, saying that any facts contradicting the thesis of the Roswell report will likely be viewed by them as being evidence of a cover-up. An example of this is with the testimony of Glenn Dennis. Dennis clearly had trouble remembering specifics of the event and correct dates, which is understandable given the fact that 45 years would have passed at the time of his interview with U.S. Air Force officials. Notably, while the report uses this to negate Dennis's claims, it also states that investigators located the nurse and others he described but could not remember the names of, using facts that Dennis provided. It should also be noted that Dennis never admitted to actually seeing any alien bodies himself, and several details he provided could be substantiated, such as the description of the nurse and others, to include that she was a devout Catholic, and that she transferred to England not long after the Roswell incident. The nurse herself is believed by the report to be First Lieutenant Eileen Fanton, who unfortunately could not be interviewed because she was deceased by the time of the Air Force investigation. While it is entirely possible that Dennis could have been using real events and people he met to fabricate a story of alien bodies, it should not be assumed that was what he was doing. The second report went on to discount further claims from eyewitnesses regarding alien bodies, stating that high-altitude tests using realistic small crash dummies are a likely cause of why people remember seeing what appeared to be alien bodies. This itself presents a problem, as such tests were not conducted until well into the 1950s, essentially making the reports claim that anyone who saw alien bodies during the incident are just misremembering or confusing facts and dates. What convolutes the Roswell story even more is that an alleged film from 1947 surfaced not long after the Roswell report, claiming to show an actual alien autopsy of those recovered near Roswell. As this film has been largely debunked, and it would make this video even longer than it already is, we won't provide any more analysis on it. One important fact about the two Roswell reports that should be known, and that many skeptics fail to acknowledge, is that the Project Mogul explanation is in fact just a theory. There is not a single piece of direct evidence in either of the reports which firmly substantiates that what crashed at Roswell was a Project Mogul balloon rig. Project Mogul is simply a hypothesis that happens to fit within the narrative that the Air Force reports are conveying. That's not to say that there aren't facts that line up with this possibility. We just find it highly problematic that the U.S. Air Force concluded these reports with such certainty. Yet, in all of their records reviews and witness testimonies, they could not find one piece of direct evidence which stated a Mogul balloon rig is what was recovered near Roswell. In fact, what's more confusing is that key records from the Roswell Army Airfield at the time of the incident seem to have been destroyed, outside of normal protocol for the era. The Roswell reports appear to gloss over that fact, as if there is nothing strange about it. Digging deeper into what might be able to provide more fidelity on what crashed at Roswell, C4 detective began looking at the 509th Bomber Group officers who supported Marcel's claims that what crashed was not of this world. What we found is many of them had distinguished careers after the Roswell incident. Moreover, Marcel himself was promoted to lieutenant colonel and sent to Washington, D.C. to be made chief of the Foreign Technology Intelligence Division. A strange coincidence, considering an Army officer named Lieutenant Colonel Philip Corso had this position in 1961, and in 1997 he co-authored a book titled The Day After Roswell, where he made the explosive claim that technology recovered from an alien craft which crashed near Roswell in 1947 was used to spark a technological revolution in the U.S. Indeed, there were several new technologies that did arise shortly after 1947. In the military evaluations we were able to locate on Marcel, he appeared to have been a highly respected, intelligent, and decorated officer who seemed to be thought very highly of by his subordinates, peers, and his leadership. The idea that Marcel could mistake a weather balloon, which were very common in 1947, for alien material seems highly unlikely. Project Mogul itself was just a series of modified weather balloons used for a classified purpose. In fact, as a senior intelligence officer in the only nuclear-powered bomber group in the U.S., it's also likely that Marcel may have been read onto Project Mogul, as he may have had a need to know, especially if they were operating in Roswell Army airspace. This is also interesting considering the Roswell reports focused heavily on the few interviews which counted Marcel's claims, one of which was testimony of then Warrant Officer Irving Newton, a weather forecasting officer. Newton stated he was called to General Ramey's office where he was told that someone found a supposed flying saucer in New Mexico, and it was in the general's office. Newton stated he was told that a flight had been planned to ship it to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Ohio. Newton stated as soon as he saw the material, he giggled and told everyone in the room that it was a balloon, further confirming that a Mogul balloon and a weather balloon are so similar that they are easily recognizable as such. He further stated that Marcel tried to convince him several pieces were not of this world and showed him a supposed piece with alien writing on it, but that Newton was not convinced. Newton then stated he was dismissed from Ramey's office, but that he remembered Ramey had canceled the flight to Wright-Patterson. What's interesting about Newton's testimony is that he confirmed that Wright-Patterson was indeed a destination of the supposed UFO material, but his testimony contradicts other military witnesses who said that certain material was actually transported to Wright-Patterson, including witnesses who were allegedly on those flights. He also makes a point to highlight the supposed incompetence of Marcel, painting a picture of him being ignorant of standard weather balloon material, and that he was the one trying to push the alien theory. This also contradicts Marcel's statements that the material in Ramey's office was not the material he brought with him from Roswell. Another, and probably more important witness that Colonel Weaver interviewed for the Air Force investigation was then Captain Sheridan Cabot, along with Cabot's wife. Cabot was a senior Army CIC special agent who was at the debris site with Marcel. The Roswell report confirmed that with Cabot at some point at the debris site was one of his enlisted agents. Master Sergeant Louis Rickett. At the time of the Air Force investigation, Cavett was the only surviving member of the team that initially responded to the crash debris site. In his testimony, Cavett stated that the material recovered consisted of a reflective sort of material like aluminum foil and some thin bamboo-like sticks. Cavett stated he thought at the time that what he found was a weather balloon and nothing more. Cavett went on to say that he didn't think he even wrote a report on the incident, thinking of it as something that didn't matter. Interestingly, author Donald Schmidt conducted taped interviews with numerous alleged Roswell witnesses, to include Master Sergeant Rickett, before he passed away, as well as Sheridan Cavett. Rickett's account more closely matches Marcel's and directly contradicts the statements made by Cavett, some of which were addressed in the Air Force interview with Cavett. Rickett also conveys there was a cover-up, and Cavett made it clear to him that they were involved in something top secret. Rickett's account includes strange light materials recovered that could not be bent, and also stated that Cavett made more than one trip out to the debris site. Rickett also added that military police had set up checkpoints leading to the site. These contradictions become even more strange when Cavett's earlier interviews are examined, to which he repeatedly claimed he never even went out to the debris site. So who is telling the truth, Cavett, or the numerous witnesses who have come forward, to include Marcel and Rickett? To the Air Force's and Colonel Weaver's credit, they appeared to do everything they could to encourage military witnesses to talk, to include absolving them of any former secrecy oaths or non-disclosure agreements they may have sworn to. However, this does not mean Cavett wasn't trying to just tell Weaver just what he wanted to hear. When examining the Air Force and other interviews with Cavett, one theme seems to be present: that Cavett just wanted to be left alone and done with the Roswell topic altogether. This, along with the fact that Army CIC agents are notorious for keeping their exploits secret even long after their service ends, may be a reason for Cavett to not reveal the whole truth about what he knew. Of course, there remains the possibility that Cavett was telling the truth as he remembered, and that all the other witnesses were either lying or exaggerating their own experiences. It should also be noted that many of Marcel's interviews have been reviewed by several body language experts and found him to be truthful in what he was saying in every instance that we found. Addressing some more recent evidence that has come forward, in the now infamous pictures of Marcel and others in General Ramey's office with the supposed crash debris, a letter can be seen being held by Ramey in what has come to be known as the Ramey Memo. Recent work done by Kevin Randall and David Rudiak at the University of Texas at Arlington has used the latest computer technology to enhance this memo. In one version, supposedly using a computer ray tracing method, much of the memo is believed to have been deciphered. This deciphered memo is incomplete, but appeared to include several key terms including disc, victims of the wreck, a cordon, and a CIC team. Additionally, there appears to be a reference in the memo assessing airfoil and to sending out a press release regarding weather balloons. If correct, this new evidence presents some problems for the U.S. Air Force Roswell reports. First, it suggests there was a military blockade of some sort, as it referenced a cordon, in direct contradiction to Cavett's official testimony of no checkpoint or military police being present. Second, it mentions possible victims of a wreck, which contradicts the report's conclusion that there were no bodies, human or alien. Third, it would confirm CIC involvement, also contradicting Cavett's statement in which he stated nothing more was done by CIC, and that he likely didn't even write a report on the matter. Finally, it mentions a press release or PR regarding weather balloons, even though this photo was allegedly taken during the same time that Irving Newton would have been called to Ramey's office to identify the debris as such, meaning the story of a weather balloon had been pre-planned. Although C4 Detective is a new channel, we're actively working on several investigation videos at this time, with many more coming in the near future. Out of all of them, we can say with absolute confidence that the Roswell incident has divided our experts more than any other so far, which led to serious thought in not undertaking this investigative topic. On one hand, there were several highly publicized UFO reports at this time, to include the now famous Kenneth Arnold story in Washington state. These reports could have caused imaginations to run wild that allowed people to mistake balloon debris with an alien spacecraft. On the other hand, the credibility of Marcel and many other witnesses, along with the unusual reaction of the U.S. military, and the numerous other strange reports such as those of a second crash site containing larger pieces of an alien craft and bodies, military checkpoints, and a massive military cleanup effort, all speak to something more than just a series of weather balloons, classified or not. In a 2011 book titled Area 51, An Uncensored History of America's Top Secret Military Base, author Annie Jacobson posits a new theory regarding the Roswell incident. Jacobson suggests that the Soviet Union was responsible for the Roswell UFO incident in 1947 by sending flying discs into New Mexico with child-size aviators on board, as a warning that they could spark a UFO panic in America. Jacobson's theory is based on a single, unnamed source who was allegedly an engineer with a defense contractor working at Area 51, who stated that he studied the remnants of the Roswell crash in 1951, along with 4 other engineers. Unfortunately, this story cannot be corroborated, and there is no known records validating the claim. Additionally, it seems that such an instance would have been uncovered rather quickly in the Air Force's Roswell reports during their investigation. That is to say, it's not impossible. One thing noted by many who have reviewed the Roswell reports is that there are many records the Air Force admitted they could not retrieve. The Associated GAO audit report confirms records from the Roswell Army Airfield during the time of the Roswell incident are missing or were mistakenly destroyed. In addition to the missing or destroyed records, the Air Force admittedly did not conduct much effort in attempting to gain access to U.S. Army records, which was the branch running the Air Force during at that time in 1947, due to the Air Force not yet being fully established as a separate branch of the military. The Air Force further admits they had no way to compel various government agencies to provide records, only relying on what they were able to find and what was in their own historical archives. To add further questions to the Roswell story, a document emerged in 1984 allegedly claiming to be a top-secret document referencing the forming of a secretive group within the federal government called Majestic 12 or MJ-12. According to these documents, MJ-12 was formed shortly after the Roswell incident in order to keep UFOs and aliens on Earth the secret. The documents also claim that what crashed at Roswell was indeed an alien spacecraft. There are many issues involving these documents that we don't have time to analyze for this investigation. However, C4 Detective will be doing a follow-up video in the near future in order to do a deep dive on MJ-12 documents. For now, we will focus on the evidence we have presented thus far to reach a conclusion on the Roswell incident as it stands today. So what have we at C4 Detective concluded regarding the Roswell incident? On our team includes several who are experts in military history, skilled investigators, and many who have held top-secret SCI clearances. Based on the totality of credible witness statements, contradicting information in the Roswell reports, and the now established cover-up for which there is still not a valid paper trail, we do believe in majority that something crashed near Roswell in Corona, New Mexico in 1947. However, we believe it highly unlikely that it was just a weather balloon or even a classified Project Mogul weather balloon. In addition to everything we have presented, we do not believe senior officers from the Army Air Forces and members of the elite 509th Bomber Group would not immediately recognize material from a weather balloon. We also find it highly improbable that a decision would be made to cover up a classified weather balloon operation with the story of a normal weather balloon, with no associated records showing this, no known witnesses definitively confirming it was Project Mogul, and the unusual manner in which the cover-up was conducted. Classified projects, even those from this era, would have mechanisms in place and standard operating procedures to carry out should a leak of such a project occur. Instead, the Army during the Roswell incident was acting as though it was covering up something unique that it had not been prepared for. This, along with the dozens of credible witnesses, both military and civilian, of something crashing with associated reports of an explosion, all indicate an object of significant density and size. Many of these witness claims that seemingly corroborate each other points to something extraordinary occurring that was much more than a classified balloon. That said, we are not saying what crashed was an alien craft, nor are we saying that we think it was a Soviet deception operation. We are simply saying that there is sufficient evidence to point to something more happening, as there is just too much information indicating otherwise. What we do know is that several of the military witnesses, such as veterans of the 509th Bomber Group who have supported Marcel's claims, including Marcel himself, have been recorded or told family members that even though they came forward, they knew more about what was going on, but would never talk about it. In Jesse Marcel's case, when asked by family members if there were alien bodies at Roswell, He is quoted as saying something echoed by several other military witnesses in similar fashion when pressed about further details on the Roswell incident. There are things that this world is not ready for. Thanks for watching. Do you have a suggestion or evidence you want to provide to C4 Detective to help us discover more? Contact us and we may do a follow-up to this video. And if you like this video, please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel so we can keep bringing you investigation videos. It's the only thing that allows us to continue bringing you the truth.